This was really, really into Firefox that summer. It came out in July '82, and they peppered the TV with spots for Firefox all the time. And then, so me and my buddies, we went to see Firefox opening night. So the 8 o'clock show at the Hollywood. And there was a line all the way. It was a big opening weekend for Firefox. It was a line all the way down Hollywood Boulevard. And we waited in line and we got to see the movie. And pretty much everybody was disappointed in it. And actually, the film got very bad word of mouth on its. I think it probably did really good in its opening weekend, but it did. But bad word of mouth followed it around, and it dropped considerably. And it's kind of the nature of the beast for this kind of movie, because the whole movie is obviously about Clint Eastwood is going to steal this plane and try to fly it out of Russian airspace, and all the TV spots had to do with him stealing the plane, and had to do with him flying around and him having big dogfights. That's only a small part of the movie. That's the third act, but everything else is actually a pretty serious Robert Ludlum style espionage movie, like a serious Cold War thriller. Him meeting this contact, who takes him to another contact, who takes him to another contact, all leading to the point where he can actually maneuver his way through all these surrogates and all these like resistance fighters against the Russians to put him in the air hangar where the Firefox is so he can eventually steal it. And everyone just thought that was boring. And I even remember the Variety review at the time said, hey, this actually sounds like it would be a cool movie. It could be fun. A good us versus the Russians movie. And Eastwood's the perfect person to star in a movie like that.
Totally.
And they actually said that he made a mistake making it too Robert Ludlum, like in the first three quarters. To me, looking at the movie now, that's a good part of the movie. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that Eastwood was a little out of his depth when it came to doing the special effects stuff. I'm pretty sure that he left all that to John Dykstra. But I think why Eastwood responded to the script is everything that no one else liked about the movie. Is I think he responded to the genuine spy nature of the story of him in Russia being sent from this place to that place. I think that's really good storytelling. I mean, it might be some of his best storytelling from that point in the 80s.
Well, like when the ads for this came out, it was all flying. There may have been a gunshot or a car crash or somebody running around or something, but it was pretty much all flying. And it was like, you've got to think in Russian. You've got to think in Russian. And it was like this kind of almost not sci-fi thing, but like, it is sci-fi. Sci-fact,
Well, it is sci-fi. I don't think we have a plane like this today.
Well, the Chinese might.
They don't have a plane that goes Mach 6.
Yeah, they've got a plane that goes, they just did some kind of hypersonic jet that circled the Earth.
It's one of the things that actually kind of, I don't want to say hurt the movie. A little bit after this, Top Gun will come out. Yeah. And then Iron Eagle will come out. And all these movies will come out. And they're going to use real jets. And so everything that they can't do that because they don't have jets. Like
every other audience member, I went to the movie and I was expecting mostly that. And I have to say, when I first saw it, my feelings were, I was just bored for the first part of it. And then when the airplane stuff happened, to be honest, when I first saw the movie, I just wasn't plussed by it. Now, watching the movie again with you, I found myself really enjoying all of the Ludlum-like, lead up to it. In fact, that turned out to be all I really liked about the movie.
I'd like to say that I was smarter than everybody else, but I'm not saying I was bored, but at some point, I kind of almost lost track of what I was watching sitting in the theater. It was like there was so much cloak and dagger going on that I wasn't suspecting that I was like, what am I watching? I literally forgot almost for a second.
Where am I?
I almost forgot for a second what I bought a ticket for. And then even though I recognized how cool that shot was of him coming into the cockpit, especially like seeing from the guy who's dying's point of view.
Yeah, where he's dressed like the Daft Punk guy.
Yeah. There still was this aspect of I was almost too disengaged by what I bought a ticket to see that by the time I was seeing what I bought a ticket to see, I wasn't as yahoo rah-rah as I thought I might have been. I watched Firefox again about 3 years ago. I ended up picking up a print of the film because we show a lot of Eastwood stuff at the New Beverly. And so I picked it up and I watched it and I was like, holy shit, this is really good storytelling. Now, the film's very silly. All the characters are crazy hokey. So I can only make so much of it.
But sometimes in a good way, like Freddie Jones is.
Yeah. Well, no, he's not hokey. He's absolutely terrific. All right. It's more all the Russian characters are very hokey. But characters aside and aspects aside, just the storytelling of the spy stuff, I think is really, really charming. And again, one of those things where you compare modern movies to then, they wouldn't tell the story this way now. They would cut corners, they would add montages, they would just move everything along.
You'd see the airplane 3 or 4 times before we do it now.
Yes, and nothing would mean anything, at least not his journey. Now, the film is very hokey because basically what Eastwood is doing is he's doing a caught behind enemy lines espionage World War II movie.
Yeah.
Where you're in
They're
Nazi.
almost playing Nazis.
Yeah, well, they are playing
the
Nazis.
British people playing Russians are doing Nazi accents.
Yeah. They're like so whether you're in Nazi occupied France or if you're in Berlin doing all those George Sanders movies, this is basically that.
Yeah.
Except given a Cold War twist by making them Russians. Eastwood does a fairly good job doing a cheap version of Russia for what they're trying to sell as Russia. However, having said that, it's a little disconcerting they don't take the Russian stuff more seriously. I mean, if you watch Paul Mazursky's Moscow and the Hudson, if you watch 2010, if you watch Russia House, they take the Russian stuff seriously. Hardly any Russians are in this movie. It's basically
weird.
A whole bunch of British actors talking with marbles in their mouths, doing phony Russian accents.
Possibly a few Germans.
And some Germans who are not doing a Russian accent at all.
They're just doing a German accent.
They're just doing German accents. I mean, one of the things also that's actually kind of charming about it now is there is something charming to go back to the 80s when there was this Cold War, us versus the Ruskies, us versus them.
Such warm, comfortable times those were.
And the fact that we actually thought that Russia could defeat us, not only defeat us, take us over one day.
Yeah, that Red Dawn could happen.
Yeah, there was this, I remember Howard Rosenberg, who was like the TV critic for the Los Angeles Times, wrote, how can a country that makes Dukes of Hazzard the #1 TV show in America ever hope to beat the Russians?
With Dukes of Hazzard is the answer.
Yeah. With the General Lee.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've got the Russians literally filling in for the Nazis. And apparently when it comes to Jewish persecution, the Russians are picking up right where the Nazis left off in this movie. The lead guy for the KGB who's after them is a Ken Russell regular named Kenneth Coley. He's in The Music Lovers. He's in The Devils. He's in Mahler. He plays Chopin in Lizomania.
He's great in Lizomania.
And he's the KGB officer who's assigned to protect the Firefox.
Like baby Nicole Williams.
He looks like Nicole Williamson's low rent younger brother.
Yeah,
he's Ernie Williamson. But his KGB guy is basically a Gestapo guy.
He's clicking his heels every time he turns and stares off, into a void to give a monologue.
The KGB acting like the Gestapo is what you want in a us versus the Ruskies movie. But then there's all the contacts that Eastwood meets along the way. And they're the really hokey ones. Okay, so there's Warren Clark, who's played the pudgy van driver who's got almost too big a part from Clockwork Orange. He's like
Billy Boy.
Yeah.
No, not Billy Boy. I'm sorry.
Dim. Yeah. So he's in. I had just seen Hawk the Slayer a couple days earlier, and he's in Hawk the Slayer.
I can only think of one other movie. He's in Hawk the Slayer. I know he's in Ishtar. I know he's in this.
Yeah. And but you also have Roland Lacey, who's the Peter Lorre character from Raiders of the Lost Ark. You have Nigel Hawthorne, the guy, the dead guy, the guy who dies in 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Yeah. Okay. All right, he's in there. And so, like I said, you have all these British actors playing Russians, all acting with marbles in their mouth. Nobody's accent's the same. It's just kind of all over the place. Add to the fact that you have Clint Eastwood who has no character in the movie. But that's not so bad for Eastwood. Eastwood, at that time especially, could score without a character.
Well, he has a very cardboard character.
Yeah. But I mean, there's no meat on its bones, but that's okay. Eastwood could score without a character because Eastwood always knew who he was and what his function in this particular movie is.
PTSD is his character.
Yeah. And and he looks good in the suit, and you want him to do everything. However, they make the whole thing about the fact that he was born in Russia. At the very least, his mother is Russian and she raised him in Russian. And then when it turns out that he has to be able to think in Russian, he can do it. Because the whole thing is the missiles are controlled by the pilot's thoughts. You never even have to hit a button. You just think, it's destroyed. But he has to think in Russian. Now, it's a little ridiculous in the movie because you would think that would be brought up much earlier. That would kind of be a deal breaker, frankly. All right, but we're not revealed until Nigel Hawthorne decides to tell you what's going on. And then that was the time in the theater where the whole audience laughed.
Yeah.
It was a bad laugh. It laughed because it was ridiculous that he would not be told that till now. And it's ridiculous to think that Eastwood can think in Russian. Because he has shown no facility with the Russian language in the movie thus far. And there's one time...
Only one moment in Russian.
And there's only one moment where he actually has to say a couple of Russian phrases when he's passing by a checkpoint. Yeah. And he's so lousy saying it, you can't believe it's in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in a movie where they're obviously supposedly speaking Russian, but they're speaking English. So why they would actually have him say Russian so badly
in that one moment
doesn't make any sense.
It breaks the reality of the movie completely.
It breaks the reality that never existed, but now it's for sure.
Yeah.
You just assumed Eastwood wouldn't be able to do this. Now you know for a fact he can.
When you have something ridiculous or when you have a lie to tell, you just tell it really big. And so this whole idea of thinking Russian, they just needed to make a bigger deal out of it. The reason he's selected is because his mother is Russian. So they should have said, listen, the way this things work, it's a brain wave reader implant. The first language we're born with that we learn, our mother tongue, our first tongue, is your primal language. And they needed to, in some way make that a thing, make it bigger.
It's a kind of fallacy that helped plug me into the idea of Inglourious Bastards. Firefox is a good example, but another good example is Where Eagles Dare. The whole thing is that Eastwood and
he's supposed to actually be German.
Yeah, well, he's a Canadian in it.
Yeah,
actually.
He speaks German.
But that's the idea: is the fact that both
he's raised, I think,
Richard Burton and Eastwood speak German so well that they can put on Nazi officers' uniforms and just hang around in taverns and talk to anybody and get away with it. And because English is supposed to be German, then we just all buy it. But I remember watching that and thinking, if the actors literally had to speak German, that would be interesting. How would they pull it off? That would be, to me, this is a whole level of suspense that's dispensed with this. Okay, now we're officially speaking Russian or German, but we're actually just speaking English. That was a thing to bring into Inglourious Bastards. Oh, well, if they're going to have to do that, that is going to be a suspense beat.
Use it as a device.
That's a thing, and I have to find actors that can speak German.
The only time I've ever seen sort of what I call the unified field theory of language in movies was Hunt for Red October. Mm-hmm. That moment where the camera zooms in on his mouth and then they switch during the reading of the poem.
Yeah.
From Russian into English. From that moment on, it's like, boom, he solved the problem that had plagued filmmakers for, since the dawn of cinema.
I agree. But in the situation of both Firefox, Where Eagles Dare, and Inglourious Bastards, the pulling off of the language is the undercover job. That's part of the mission itself.
Right.
Then it gets to the first time that we actually see the Firefox. And it's fantastic. It almost took my breath away. Not because the plane was so magnificent, even though the plane was pretty fucking cool.
Well, that life-size mock-up is wonderful.
That life-size mock-up was amazing,
Yeah.
and it works. I mean, they wheel it out.
Yeah.
It had a feeling. It had a ooh that I didn't feel the first time at the movie theater.
And also that design at that time period for an airplane to look like that when we were just starting to experiment with like stealth airplanes and things like that. It was like, I mean, that was the sort of thing that we were told to be afraid of
Now,
the Russians is this kind of technological advancement that we were trying to do.
Okay, so then he steals the airplane. Now, look, I will admit that even back in '82 when I saw the movie, and I've worked with John Dykstra quite a bit, and I'm the biggest John Dykstra fan, and whenever John Dykstra works with me, I'm starstruck the entire time I'm around him.
Well, yeah, he's a superstar.
He's a superstar. Having said that, back in '82, I thought this Firefox dogfight stuff was a little chintzy.
Well, it's looking like Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm honest.
It does look like...
The movie is playing this kind of dark, ludlum realism, and then suddenly you're in Battlestar Galactica.
Now, the thing about it, I mean, what was probably really, really difficult for him is the thing that we take for granted, is the fact that it's taking place in Earth's atmosphere. And the fact that, he's got to get all those trees and all that land mass and all that water reflected in the cockpit windows, reflected in the visor of the helmets and everything. But the part that really works is when it cuts to the ground and when he's flying low and you see the effect that Firefox has on the water when it flies by the water or on the earth, and it just like rips it like two plows, like two supersonic plows are just cutting through a forest.
Yeah, or when it's going through the ocean or when it's kicking up snow and it's just like the afterburners are just blowing this stuff up, and it looks
stuff is thrilling.
Oh, it looks like they went out into the ocean and set charges, long rows of charges, and then exploded them in sequence and then composited the plane in. And you see that and you look at the attention to detail and the care that went into creating that composite shot. And it really is beautiful.
It's craftsmanship. And again, it's not a bunch of dorks fucking around with a computer. This is matte lines and these are filming things. This is handmade.
Yeah.
There even is an interesting aspect to the chase itself, because part of the thing about the film is there's a prototype for Firefox that's not mounted with weapons. And so the idea is to blow up the prototype, and during that confusion, that's when Eastwood will steal the jet. But they do all that, but they don't destroy the prototype. So they're able to take the pilot who is supposed to go up in Firefox and they mount weapons on it and they send it after him. Now, the way it's set up, he can be fueled in midair and you can't.
Yeah.
So the whole problem
that gives him a jump of
the whole problem with the
minutes.
first half of the race that Eastwood has to deliver is he can't fly Firefox out full on at Mach 5. He has to stay at Mach 2 so he doesn't piss away his gasoline. And he's got to fly low. He's got to avoid. He's got to do everything he can to not just crash in the Arctic waters.
He's got to fly low to the Ural Mountains to make his way up to the Arctic Circle.
So when he gets to the Arctic Circle, and once he gets gasoline in him, now he can just go balls out.
Yeah, and then we really see Firefox going crazy.
Yeah, but the whole first 3/4 of the trip to get out of Russian airspace, he has to be in like second gear, and he can't get out of second gear. Then this movie has its second coolest bit once Eastwood takes it. And that is when the kind of Boris Yeltsin Brezhnev guy, his name is Stefan Schnabel.
Yeah, a career playing Russians.
Well, he looks like Boris Yeltsin, so of course he has a career playing Russians. All right, he's like the secretary. And then I actually had forgotten this part in the movie, even though they built they built a lot of the TV spots around it. I am speaking to the pilot who has stolen a jet airplane.
I'm going to ask you to return it. First, I ask you.
And Eastwood actually says the only good line Eastwood has. And so then we'll just forget about it? I would not lie to you that blatantly. What I will say is you will be alive.
You'll be allowed to live.
Because you will die if you keep going.
But the problem with that guy is so good and he's such a great villain and he has a rapport with Eastwood, but by then they've thrown away Nicole Williamson Jr.
Yeah, no. That's where it starts getting wonky. Okay, because the German actor is the guy named Claude Loaded-ish. He's given the job where everybody else is the doubting Thomas about Eastwood's ability. All right, he's the guy, he's the smart Russian that realizes that Eastwood could probably pull this off.
Oh, no, but what? If we better do that.
So he's the balding map pointer outer who must babble the endless counter pursuit tactics in an accent that is damn close to unintelligible.
If I use the afterburner,
I mean, he's the one saying all the counter pursuit tactics, and you don't understand a fucking thing he says.
Send up the plan.
We literally, this guy's got to do all the talking. Forget about the fact that he sounds German. He doesn't sound Russian, but he's just, we started to think.
He sounds like Elmer Fudd.
He does sound like Elmer Fudd, like a German Elmer Fudd.
And like, why they give all of that exposition and all of that, like, suddenly it becomes his movie all of a sudden.
Yeah, because you want either the Brezhnev guy to be talking in this way, the Boris Yeltsin guy to be talking this way, or bring back Kenneth Coley.
Yeah.
Bring back Nicole Williams Jr., all right? Ernie Williams, all right? Bring back the low-rent younger brother.
Well, it would have also made sense.
I mean, it's a real drag that he's thrown out of the movie after Eastwood
it would have also made a lot more sense if the Russian military guys were like, oh, no, we got him, no problem, we got him. And the premier guy who kind of knows, Eastwood's character more, is like, no, we don't have him. He's the one who believes he's not the military guy.
Who's not just coming from a military point of view. He's coming from a more psychological, he has other fish to fry than just the military where, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
And even thematically to an American audience, then the idea of, well, the Russian military might not is operating at a different level than the premier.
And like we said, he like that one little moment that he talks to Eastwood on the microphone, he has a connection with him.
Yeah.
That's actually alive.
And you want that to continue. You want that connection. You want that personal touch between the two.
I think the movie has fantastic exposition. All the exposition scenes are so much fun.
You must be talking about Freddie Jones.
And I'm talking about Freddie Jones.
Yeah,
Freddie Jones is like...
He deserves an award in this one.
So ridiculously hammy, yet that's who you want to deliver big exposition. And the exposition is fun.
Yeah, and why he's the one who's working for the Americans as their advisor.
Yeah. All the description of what Firefox can do is really fun.
Yeah.
It's really exciting. I mean, you have to always understand, it's almost crazy that the film tries to get a little realistic in the Eastwood behind enemy line stuff.
Yeah.
Because everything beforehand is so incredibly preposterous. One, that the Russians would be able to build Firefox in the first place. It would probably bankrupt Russia, all right, if they built two Firefoxes.
It's long been an American fear. Like, Hunt for Red October is also a submarine with baffles. It's...
And so, okay, the fact that a jet airplane would change the balance of power between the two countries. Yes. If Russia were to mass produce Firefox, that would be it, meaning the balance of power would be completely tipped over. They would never be able to mass produce Firefox. I'm serious. Russia didn't have money at that time. They would have bankrupted themselves making two. Forget about mass production. America can mass produce it. Russia never could. Again, but that's almost like a time machine aspect about it all.
Yeah.
When we actually thought Russia had enough money to beat us even at our own game.
Well, if you just pretend, if you were to make this movie today, just pretend it's China. Mm-hmm. Pretend it's the hypersonic scramjet that they just...
They did not have a Howard Hughes in Russia. They did not have a Lockheed. They did not have a TRW. They didn't have any of these things.
You mentioned the whole PTSD aspect of this movie, the behind enemy lines aspect of it, which is, Eastwood's character has been, presumably it's Vietnam.
Yeah. He's kind of like
he's a Vietnam vet. He's been a pilot. He's been shot down. In fact, he's been shot down in a situation almost identically similar to Admiral James Stockdale, who's shot down over enemy lines, ends up spending 7 years at the Hanoi Hilton. And I got to know him really, really well. And so
it seems like a weird mix of James Stockdale, And Chuck Norris.
Yeah, and Chuck Norris. Well, I mean, and these are popular movies at this time. And then while he's in captivity and about to be taken to, you know, some hellhole.
He's the rat infested water torture place of Deer Hunter.
Yeah, he's about to experience Mao, go sing Mao. You know, he's about to experience that pleasure. Yeah. Well,
Michael, there's all these rats in here. Which is John Savage saying Michael Cimino, there's all these rats in here.
Yeah.
That's true.
There's all these rats in here. Yeah. There's really rats in
here. Michael, there's all these rats in here.
Use it. Use them. That's your tool. That's your
It just so happens that Robert De Niro's character's named Michael too, so they were able to keep it.
It worked out fine.
Was it like Roger? Oh, there's all these rats in here.
One of my problems with that is, and they keep using this as like, this is his kryptonite.
Yeah.
This is his weakness. Whenever anything happens, like, you know, the helicopters are landing to give him the mission, he has a PTS moment. Whenever anything stressful happens, he's about to take off the Firefox and he's in a shower beforehand, you know, kind of dressing up as the pilot in this crazy red tile shower.
In this, like,
super
amazing
groovy,
shower from
like Russia
from an Icelandic spa.
Yeah, it's an amazing, like, with a special tile job and everything. It's like really, he's in there and he's having like PTSD as like the alarms are going off and everything. Yeah. Okay. So this is supposed to be his kryptonite. This is supposed to be what like stops him. And even at the final moment when he's in the airplane, suddenly he's got another bout of PTSD where he's seeing the little girl's face and he's
free falling.
Free falling and unable to kind of do anything until he comes out of it. Well, because he's a pilot, and because it was Vietnam, he could have been a pilot in Vietnam, and he could have been somebody who was sent in to fly in, blow up the
carpet bomb,
the Keesong Delta or something like that. And he goes in, he does his job, but he drops bombs knowing that there's a village of people there. You don't have to go full missing in action. That would be enough, I think, for him to say, I don't want to fly again. I definitely don't want to fly a combat plane. I don't want to drop bombs on people. I don't want to drop napalm on people. I'm still traumatized by this. That seems like that would have been enough. I feel like the connection between the airplane and the trauma becomes removed at that point.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like many things in the movie, it's a hokey device, and the more they emphasize it, the hokier it gets.
Well, and the fact that at the very end, he's been firing missiles with his brain and using this thing to fly around, no problem. Like they've made this big deal out of it. You know, you've got to think in Russian, but they really only use that device at the very, very end when he's got to fire the derriere missile or whatever they call it. I almost think he says it in French. I heard French. I heard him say derriere.
Well, I think
the missile derrière.
He
or something
fires
like
some
that.
missiles before. I think he gets excited, so he starts thinking in English.
He says it out loud so that we can.
Why aren't you working?
But if
God damn it,
if he had been unable to engage those early missiles, and then like really had to dig deep to his primal self, his childhood self who spoke in Russian, to be able to do it, then like they would have like, as it was just sort of like they just left it until the very end.
One of the other awkward things about the movie is its abrupt ending. You're not quite. I remember that in the theater. People like, okay, and then
I guess it's over.
Exactly. I was expecting them to land. I'd see David Huffman again. Freddie Jones would, he did it, my boy. But no, it's over. We're done.
What I do love about the movie is how brutal it is. Like for instance, he plays a replacement of a drug dealer. Like his character is replacing somebody who's a drug dealer. Yeah. And they get that actual drug dealer.
And then they beat him to death with a hammer.
Yeah, with like a hammer. Like that dim guy from Clockwork Orange beats the fucking life out of the guy and throws him into the water. And Eastwood is like mortified. He's like, oh my God, what are you doing? You can't believe it.
I actually like the whole thing that he doesn't trust.
I love that.
He doesn't trust his handlers for a while because he just saw them murder somebody.
Like,
hey, some drug dealer.
They don't just beat him. Eastwood allows there to be like an additional shot of the guy going in and make double tapping. Let's make sure the guy's dead.
And then
and then later.
Then he's then the truck driver that he's supposed to, with the pudgy van driver, Warren Clark, the Clockwork Orange guy, who's the he's the sensitive Russian. He's the
good Russian.
Yeah,
I'm doing it for my wife.
His normal truck driving partner is just like, don't go into work today. And so Eastwood is like, this guy's is now got the phony identity of this truck driver. And so the KGB just goes and gets the truck driver out of bed. And then they proceed to beat him to death in actually a scene so violent.
Yeah.
It stayed with me for the next half hour in the movie.
Yeah, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then that moment where the guy's like, but you told me, like, oh, now you've killed him. And, but you told me to. It's your fault.
Yeah.
But then they show that guy's face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's just disfigured.
Oh, and also, he's like
Johnny Handsome all of a sudden.
He's beating him to death with these like crazy leather gloves, you know? And then they go, but you told me to beat him. And then like, the Kenneth Coley basically, Schweinhund! Just slaps him upside the head.
And so like the fact that you were in this like hard-boiled kind of reality, that's actually what I had forgotten about the movie and what I loved about the movie.
Like to me, the hokey stuff doesn't take away from the fun of the movie, because there's a hokey quality to the Cold War anyway, back then in the 80s. And there's a hokey quality to the us versus the Russians kind of movie anyway. So I'm kind of okay with all that. But, the strongest thing about the movie is all the exposition scenes that both David Huffman and then the other actors playing the generals, and especially Freddie Jones has. They're just enjoyable.
Freddie Jones is amazing.
It's the best dialogue in the whole movie is the exposition
scenes.
He's
so much fun to watch in this movie.
He's so much fun. But now, okay, so this is a science fiction film. But this came out in the summer of 82, July of 82. I think what has gone easily goes down now as the greatest sci-fi summer of all time. This is what came out the same summer. Same summer as Firefox.
Only in the summer.
E.T.
Oh my God.
Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Oh, wow.
I actually think John Carpenter's The Thing opened on the same day as Firefox.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Blade Runner.
Wow.
Tron.
Yeah.
Road Warrior.
Yeah.
The sci-fi summer of all time.
Yeah. We were so spoiled. We were so spoiled.
Okay.
Didn't know how good we had it.
I'm going to read from the LA Reader, the review of Firefox.
And you're reading from an actual LA Reader that is yellowed.
Yes, I am.
It is like those people that live in a hoarder house that have newspapers up to the ceiling. Quentin has LA Readers.
Hey, I resemble that remark. Okay, this is David Esterstein. Taking the form of a spy adventure thriller, this feature-length salute to the Reagan administration's resumption of the Cold War is clearly designed to encourage select numbers of the unemployed to believe that a brighter future awaits inside the cockpit of one of those shiny new bombers middle-income taxpayers are presently paying through the nose for. Okay, we're already...
Wow.
This is starting
already
off
he's politicizing his
such
review.
a political point for such a hokey...
Yeah.
ridiculous movie. But try as it might, this pinhead programmer never gets off the ground. The Russians, according to producer-director star Clint Eastwood and his cohorts, are now so far advanced of the United States that they've got a super bomber whose capabilities threaten to, gasp, shift the balance of world power. The only way to turn the tide is to steal the plane out from under them, and ex-Vietnam vet Clint is, you guessed it, the only man for the job. Not since Frank Lovejoy stopped being a communist for the FBI has so much blatant propaganda hogged a movie screen. The difference is that Firefox is nowhere near as entertaining as such McCarthy-era delights as Women on Pier 13 or Shack Out on 101. Well, I will admit, it's not as good as Shack Out on 101. That is a terrific movie. It's a long trek through spy routines that look like Disney rewrites of John le Carre before reaching a finale whose special effects aren't likely to draw the masses away from the likes of Asteroids or Donkey Kong.
Wow, that's a really brutal...
Yes. But it also, it shows its politicalness to such a degree that it almost can be discounted.
He wears it for, which actually leads me to ask Quentin, would you... I mean, this is Eastwood making this, and we know where Eastwood is politically. Is this personal propaganda or is this corporate propaganda? I mean, it's a studio film.
I think it's popcorn propaganda.
popcorn propaganda.
Yeah, it's just it was a.
But it's being made by a studio, and it's fulfilling a kind of
It's a fun.
need.
He doesn't buy this Russians as Nazis. He's making a programmer. He's making. It's a good idea. That's why we all went and saw it on the opening weekend.
Yeah.
You know, it's popcorn propaganda. I don't think it had. He has. There's no real dog on this fight.
Okay.
At least not towards Russia, which is one of his biggest markets.
Yeah.
I also have one of my favorite critics, Jim Sheldon, who wrote for the porno rag, The Hollywood Press, in the June 25th, 1982 edition. Firefox is a misfire. An intriguing premise, an emotionally scarred pilot is seduced out of self-imposed Alaska retirement to enter Russia and nab a prototype plane with Mach 5 speed through thought control-powered weapons and anti-radar extras. Is blown through overlength, 138 minutes, overly dark lensing, and overwrought commie accents from an international cast.
Yeah, well, they got it right there.
Not to mention over-exposition and underutilized special effects of extreme unevenness, supervised by John Dykstra, who was ripping off his own Star Wars dogfight best work. Sorry, Clintus. C-.
He called him Clintus?
Yeah, he's being an asshole. Which was Jim Sheldon's want.